remembrance of Allah is the cure. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says in his book Al-Wabil al-Sayyib, Al-Kalimat al-Tayyib, what does he say? He says remembrance of Allah is the door to the love of Allah. If you want to love Allah, then remember Him a lot. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu used to say, those who remember Allah have gone away with all good. And also Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu used to say, there is nothing that saves a person more from the punishment of Allah than his remembrance. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when Abu Darda, it was reported from them that they both used to say, everything has a beauty and everything has a clarity. Verily the beauty and the clarity of the heart is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentions in Al-Wabil al-Sayyid 100 benefits remembering Allah. 100 benefits remembering Allah. Let me tell you 20 of the benefits remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of the most beautiful things Ibn al-Qayyim said in his book. He says it helps in defeating the shaitan. Remembrance of Allah helps in defeating the shaitan and removing his harmful effects on us. He says remembrance of Allah makes Allah happy with us. He says remembrance of Allah removes the troubles and worries and our woes from our heart. He says remembrance of Allah brings the heart an amazing happiness and clarity and sweetness. He says remembrance of Allah strengthens the heart and the body. He says remembrance of Allah fills the heart and the face with light. He says remembrance of Allah brings on the provisions from Allah. He says remembrance of Allah brings a person dignity and honor. He says remembrance of Allah fills his heart with love and the spirit of Islam. He says remembrance of Allah gives him the benefit of keeping away from sins and evil. He says remembrance of Allah enters him into the highest of ihsan and the highest of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as if you can see Allah. There is no way that a person can ever reach the level of ihsan without constantly remembering Allah. He says remembrance of Allah creates an earnestness and restlessness in your heart to meeting Allah. And whoever wants to meet Allah, Allah wants to meet him. And whoever hates to meet Allah, Allah hates to meet him. As the Prophet ﷺ said in authentic hadith in Bukhari. He says remembrance of Allah creates an earnestness and restlessness for Allah. He says remembrance of Allah gives life to a dead soul. He says remembrance of Allah removes all signs of sins and saves the person from the punishment of Jahannam. He says remembrance of Allah gives us peace and tranquility and surrounds our affairs with mercy and bounty. He says remembrance of Allah causes the angels to crowd around you and for them to listen to your dhikr and for them to kiss your forehead and shake your hands and for them to protect you when you are asleep. He says remembrance of Allah along with crying from the fear and the love of Allah brings around the shade of Allah, the shade of Allah's throne on the day of judgment. And he says remembrance of Allah is the plantation of Jannah, Gharasul Jannah, the plantation of Jannah. And then he says remembrance of Allah, and those who remember Allah the most will be the sabiqun, the most foremost on the day of judgment.